All-Pro receiver. Previously requested a trade out of San Francisco, reportedly due to his desire for a new contract, along with some displeasure surrounding his role within the offense. But according to Jeremy Fowler, Deebo has not backed down from his trade request. So let's bring in the guys to talk about this. Mike T, Jeff Darlington. And Jeff, you broke this story when it originally came up. Set the scene for us first. How did this all develop and how did we get here?
Well, honestly, Ryan, nothing really has changed since I'd spoken to Deebo Samuel, and he said that he did want to be traded. And that was actually the result of the way negotiations for a new contract had begun, and not necessarily the numbers involved or the actual monetary figures, but instead just kind of the conversations that were occurring between the 49ers and Deebo that had led him to feel like, you know what, I just don't want to be here. And I know that there was optimism expressed certainly by the fan base and partly by the team when Deebo did report for mandatory minicamp, but he also was able to avoid some pretty heavy fines by attending that minicamp, which was ultimately the priority there. So for now, things remain the same. There's no new contract on the table, really, and there's no real sense that Deebo is any happier today than he was when he requested that trade. So we wait, and we see what happens at the start of training camp.
And you make a great point about the fines. I think all of the 49er faithful were like, he's back. But then, of course, you avoid getting fined by being back. But still, Mike, I wonder if you're in charge, if you're in Lynch's position, GM there, and you want to keep Deebo in-house, and that's what everybody wants to do, what's your pitch to him?
It's easy. We're going to make you fulfilled on the field in a great role for a long time. You're going to be paired with Trey Lance, and we're going to do great things together. And then off the field, economically, look, the market's pretty well set when you think about the Tyreek Hills, the Devontae Adams. We kind of know where the upper echelon now is of wide receivers. Let's just get that deal done. From a jam perspective, Ryan, when you hit on a player like Deebo Samuel, who's been so productive in so many different ways, high character, competitive, they never leave your program. So if I'm John Lynch, I'm talking about your role on the field, and I'm talking about economics, and I'm attacking both of them before the start of training camp.
Okay, so you want all that to happen. Do you see the 49ers actually doing all of that? Because right now you could say, we're going to make you the highest paid wide receiver in the league. Do you see them doing it?
Yeah, Ryan, I don't know why they wouldn't. Trey Lance is the future of the 49ers, and I'm hard-pressed to understand how Trey Lance is a better quarterback without Deebo Samuel. So this is about surrounding Trey Lance with as many good pieces as possible. You have a great player right in your building. Pay him. We know what the market is. So I don't know why the 49ers wouldn't want to get that done.
Yeah, and then, Jeff, I look at the situation and I wonder, he wants the trade. If he doesn't agree to whatever their terms are and doesn't want to be there, I wonder how willing the 49ers will be to make that move, to trade him, and what they need to get in return. It sounds like a very uphill battle for them.
No doubt, and that's where this all kind of comes to a head. And it is unlikely from the standpoint that the 49ers don't want to trade him. And really, nothing has changed today since really the first day of the NFL draft. And that was basically kind of the bridge here. If they had managed to make a trade at that point, it would have made sense. They could have gotten the compensation that would have allowed them to then use those draft picks in that draft. Now, if they were to make the trade, they don't ultimately even know how that team they trade with, that trade partner, finishes this season, thus making it unclear what that draft compensation actually would be. So it makes it even more complicated to get that trade done. And really, I don't know how it does. To me, this is going to get stickier before it gets cleaner. If they can get the contract done and make him the highest paid wide receiver, sure, maybe that fixes it. But I just don't see it going down that road right now. I think this is going to get more complicated again.
Ooh, very tough situation, giving GMs like Mike T.
It's going to be really interesting to see what he does. And if he opts in, if he only does so on the condition that the Nets trade him somewhere where he wants to go. But as of right now, I sense kind of stasis after the weekend where everyone kind of went their separate ways a bit. And I do think this is a precarious situation for the Nets. I don't think this is the kind of thing where it's actually kind of calm and the media is blowing this out of proportion. I do think there are scenarios where in a week he's gone and the Durant situation is wobbly.
Well, and I think to Zach's point, if you're looking at this from the Kyrie Irving side of things, right? 2 years ago, he played in 75% of the games, played 54 or 72 games, was an all-NBA player. Last year, when he did play, he was very good when he played. Now, obviously, he didn't play for certain reasons. We'll get into that. But he was healthy, right? And if he's healthy again next year, I think he would say, I'm probably going to play somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 games. And if you're Kyrie Irving and you're playing at that number of games, playing 75, 80% of the season, he is an all-NBA caliber player. So that's why I think from his side of things, he's going to say, I should get a next contract. And that's where the rub is. The Nets say, as you pointed out in that graphic earlier, he's played in less than half the games. Why do we want to give him a full max deal? The Nets are saying we need to have some stipulations that you're going to be on the court. And Kyrie's saying, I'm a max player. And there's the rub right there.
But when he was in Boston, he played a bunch of games, right? And his behavior was not condoning, assisting in helping them create a winning culture and a winning environment. Look, the guy's talent is ridiculous. And you can win a championship with him. All those things are great. But I think he's still got to be in an environment where there's a respect factor and accountability. And I'm not sure there will ever be a respect factor accountability unless KD holds him accountable. Because he's got to be held. He was accountable to LeBron James. Whether he liked it or not, he was accountable to that championship run in Cleveland, and he made big plays. Where else has he been held accountable to?
Is KD that kind of guy,
I'm not even sure he was held accountable like that with the Cavs. Like, Kyrie's always been his own guy. He's always sort of done his own
that's part of what
thing.
you get with Kyrie, no matter where you
this
are.
is exactly what you sign up for when you have Kyrie Irving. Like, you sign up for drama. You sign up for all of this. Like, when the Nets signed him 3 years ago from the Celtics, they knew what they were getting, right? It wasn't like this is a big surprise that there's been drama around the Brooklyn Nets. Like, this is what everybody knew was coming, but it was the price of doing business to have Kevin Durant on your team. That was why they put themselves in this position. Not that it's like, oh man, I can't believe there's drama with the Nets because Kyrie's here. Like, this is what you sign up for.
I think this is a fascinating point. And Zach, I want to bring you in on this because I think so much of the narrative about Kyrie is we're asking him to maybe change. Don't forget, a couple years ago, he was out because of different issues surrounding Black Lives Matter and the situation in the country at the time. And then there was obviously the situation last year. But I think in this narrative, Zach, of everybody saying, well, is he going to change? Is he going to be this guy that we depend on in this way? What you're mentioning is this is the guy he is. So if this is the guy he is, why not pay him the max money and say, we're going to roll with who you are, Kyrie?
Well, because the Nets have had enough of it, I guess. And even if the situation is different, and I don't know sort of how he's been when he's been available and there, he certainly played very well. And if they had faith that that would be the case for all these years afterwards with the vaccine mandate out the door, I think they would give him the max. But for whatever reason, they don't have faith in that. And you mentioned the hiatuses that he's taken. I mean, those are real things, and they break at the fabric of a team in real ways. They also haven't been that long. I think people talk about him like he was gone for 2 months or 3 months. They weren't that long. You can live with those if you know they're coming, if there's communication, if there's clarity, and I think that's where they've been lacking. But look, we're sort of missing the forest for the trees a little bit in this discussion about who Kyrie is and what he stands for. This is about Kevin Durant more than anything else. This is about a top 10, 12, 15, wherever you rank him, all-time player with 4 years left on his contract, coming off a season where he was maybe the MVP 30 or 40 games into the season, maybe the best player in the league until Giannis took that mantle. That's the story here. Kyrie was the way for the Nets to get Durant, and now Kyrie's sort of situation is the lever that could pry Durant out of there potentially. That's the big story. That's the story that the other 29 teams are really watching more than anything else.
You're absolutely right.
But, like, if you're in the Nets organization, what you're doing right now is you're sitting down, you're treating Kevin Durant like basically Aaron Rodgers wanted to be treated. You're sitting down with Kevin Durant and saying, all right, KD, look, we're going to try to make this thing work with Kyrie. If not, we'll try to find him a potential landing space. But who do you want to play with? Oh, by the way, we already have Ben Simmons. Like, first and foremost, leadership challenge for KD, get Ben Simmons on board. Ben Simmons, when the Sixers had him, they were second in defensive efficiency in the NBA. Without him, they were 12th. He's an impact player. We act like he's not even on the roster. Now, he wasn't on the roster. He's got issues. Hopefully clears those issues up. But let's not forget that you have Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant. If you can add another piece, whether it's Kyrie or someone else, they could be the best team in the East, maybe.
Wow. They could be. But to Zach's point, you know, as he said, clarity is not something we have with Kyrie Irving. So clarity is probably not something we'll have. But this all is about Kevin Durant. It's why Kyrie and Kevin are on the team. It's why this is a story now. It's not about where's Kyrie going to be. It's what does it mean for Kevin Durant.
So many layers to this. And don't worry, folks. We're going to get to the Kevin Durant of it all because I think you guys are right. That's really the biggest aspect of all of this. So much to cover in this story. Now, coming up, over to football.